Hey guys, check out my Anna hair. Huh? I spent a whole bunch of time doing my hair like this today. First of all, because today I'm finally going to be talking about Frozen the musical. Well, the Broadway musical. Frozen is already a musical. And secondly, because I'm actually gonna cut my hair soon, I think. It is too heavy. I literally pulled a neck muscle for the second time recently brushing my hair. It's too much. I've really got to cut it off, which is a shame because it is finally long enough to do Avatar The Last Airbender themed hairstyles, and I just you need really long hair to do the hair loopies. You just do. Anyway, as I said, today I am talking about Frozen, the stage musical. I happened to see this show right before Broadway shut down, less than a week before Broadway shows shut down for the pandemic. I remember actually going to see it, and we already had some warnings at that time that was like, maybe don't be in large crowds with people. And I was like, should we really be here right now? When I was looking around the audience. But, oh well. Now, I am going to sort of disclaimer here. Going into this show, I honestly did not have very high expectations for Frozen on Broadway. I had heard from someone that they felt like it just didn't have the same heart that they usually would expect from Disney. And like even this person then went on to see Aladdin later on, and when I asked them about that, they said that it reinforced what they thought about Frozen, where they thought that Aladdin had a lot of heart and Frozen just kind of was lacking. So I went into this show with really quite low expectations. I wasn't expecting to dislike it necessarily, but I wasn't really thinking that it was going to be phenomenal or anything like that. And in a way, I think it helps when you watch something and you don't really have any expectation that it's going to be really great. I honestly feel like that with a lot of things that I watch. You know, it always seems better if you don't go in thinking already that it's going to be superb. Frozen, of course, is an adaptation of the wildly popular Disney movie, and you could tell that it knew that it was an adaptation of something very popular. It played off of it. A lot of the hype that was going on in the audience and stuff were definitely people who were huge fans of the original. First of all, there were all these little children in full costume, and it was adorable. The woman who came and sat next to my mom and I, actually, she was very excited when she came up. She was like, "Hi, roomies, seatmates." You know, my mom was like, why is she talking to us? But it was just very excited. You could tell that there was really a very excited atmosphere. So that was really fun. That's always great to start off with, to have a great energy in the room. Obviously playing off of the hype of the original, there were certain things that they just sort of had to include because those were really big parts that people love in the original. So, for example, obviously the biggest one is the big dress reveal in Let It Go, the costume change where they have this sort of like breakaway swap on the costume to drop her into her Let It Go outfit, and when they did that, oh my god, the crowd went wild. You know, there's a certain excitement. Also, certain little things like the Swedish sauna guy, you know, that big summer blowout, like that guy, he showed up and people were already cheering for him before he even said anything. I was like, oh man, this guy must be a bigger deal in the fandom than I thought he was. Of course, if we're talking about adaptations, we have to talk about things that were different from the original. Probably one of the biggest ones is that they sort of changed the intro with the little girls, the little versions of Anna and Elsa, and so it expanded on their relationship with the rest of the kingdom, which I felt was really a good choice because it explained a lot of stuff about how this kingdom is so beloved, how these princesses are so beloved by their kingdom, even after, like, you know, a decade of not being present and stuff like that, how they used to run around. It really showed the love that the kingdom had for their royal family, which helps to excuse their huge absence after the parents die. They really just expanded all the stuff with Anna and Elsa in general, playing together as little girls, really give us that solid foundation of them as sisters. And the trolls were different. I mean, obviously, right? Because they're not necessarily going to have these rock monsters on the Broadway stage. And I actually really loved what they did with them. They sort of made them more into these mystical mountain people, sort of, with this definite magic. And it was almost scary, like when they first show up and they're just these black silhouettes that start appearing out of nowhere, and they have these glowing eyes, and it's a little bit spooky. It's like if you don't know about magic, you are kind of wary of it. They really did world building very well here, where they emphasized that magic is something that's not unknown to this world, but it's sort of like you can see how it's also not used all the time in just everyday situations. Like normal people are a little bit wary of it. They're a little bit cautious. It's very mystical. They don't really know what's going on with it. It's a little bit scary. So the mountain people come in and they have this whole thing. Elsa's powers. Is it a curse? Was she born with it, or was it a curse? They have that line in the original movie too, but it seemed more important somehow to me in this version. Like it stuck with me more, the way that they delivered it. They had this whole thing with Elsa having this vision of the future where she's like, oh my god, people think that are going to think I'm a monster. They're going to be scared of me. I'm so afraid of that. So this really sets Elsa's whole story right from the beginning. They made it so that their mother, knew the mountain people. Their mother had connections to this mystical world. Their mother maybe knew some things about powers, about Elsa's powers and stuff like that. And the father really didn't, and obviously the daughters really didn't. And I thought this was very interesting, especially because, okay, I'm going to admit, I haven't actually seen Frozen 2 yet. So I don't know what's going on with that. From some commercials and stuff, it seems like maybe their mother has some connection to this world, and then it's going to be about the mystery of them trying to find out what their mother knew. So it was sort of interesting to me that they then did this in the Broadway show, because it seems like maybe it was hinting at that. Maybe it was a little bit of a setup for Frozen 2. Anyway, yeah, so their mom knew, and it also changed the way that they grew during Do You Want to Build a Snowman, Elsa's relationship with her parents. How they made it very clear that their parents sort of knew that this was not sustainable, just having her shut it down. And they made it a little bit more of Elsa putting it on herself to try to shut it down, Elsa having panic attacks and being so terrified of herself and her powers, where her parents were kind of trying to help but didn't really completely know how, which I think was just really clearing up some of the arguments maybe that people were having when Frozen first came out, where they were like, her parents were really handling this really badly, or like I've seen people say her parents were abusive, which I didn't necessarily agree with, but it really expanded upon that. And they had their parents die earlier in the show, like while they were still little girls, and they sort of did this sort of like the kingdom's laws and everything will be kept the same as they were out of respect to our fallen king and queen until our young new queen can take the throne. So it also sort of gives an explanation for why everything stays the same with Elsa, why nothing improves, because like their parents sort of agree, okay, we have to go on this trip, but when we come back, we are going to do something about this because it's not sustainable for her to just be shutting down everything. So this is sort of a more logical explanation for why they end up stuck in this holding pattern that's really actually quite unhealthy for them. Other than that intro, obviously there's some other little things that change. I mean, first of all, there's new songs. There's always new songs, I feel. There's this adorable little song that the little girls sing when they're building Olaf. It's like a little bit of you, a little bit of me goes into making this snowman creation. So I really liked that. There's this cute new Anna and Kristoff song, which is fun. There's a fun, although unnecessary, in my opinion, sauna song. Like a song with the Swedish sauna guy and his family who are like all in the sauna. And this is really long number. And it's a really fun number, but it's so unnecessary. Although I suppose maybe it's necessary in terms of like just stage timing because it happens right pretty much right coming back as the first song in the second act. So maybe it's like a song that is time for people with all their little children to get back to their seats from the bathroom. But I was like, I mean, it was fun. Like I said, people love the sauna guy. Apparently, it wasn't very plot relevant, but it was fun. Pandering to the audience or not. Elsa has a new song called Monster. I'm sure a lot of people have heard that one on YouTube and stuff. They released a very nice version. Actually, I think right now there's a really nice version of Chiara Renee singing it, which is great. I love Chiara Renee. But yeah, and that, of course, ties into, like I said at the beginning, this sort of setup that young Elsa has this great fear of being seen as a monster by everybody. I will say, Hans, how do I put this? Going in, I thought that I really wanted Hans to have a song. I specifically wanted him at his, dark reveal to have a really creepy reprise of Love is an Open Door. I thought that would be so cool. First of all, I love reprises. But what they did instead of that, they did give him a reprise there. But what they did was they had him have this sort of song earlier, near the beginning when he's first introduced. That's like Hans of the Southern Isles. And then, like, later on when he's doing this thing and he's like, here's what I'm gonna do, here's my plan. And he changes it to, now I'm King Hans of Arendelle. And it doesn't hit the way I want it to. I'm gonna be honest, it just doesn't. Hans in general, he wasn't creepy enough to me in this. I wanted him to be really scary because he's kind of like this really despicable villain to me in that he's a very realistic villain. Much like Gaston, I've said this before, Gaston is one of the scariest villains because he's very real. He's like, we know this guy who doesn't take no for an answer, that kind of thing. Hans is also, he's very, to me, on a personal level, he's very despicable because what he does is he pretends to love everything that Anna loves. And he pretends to be this guy he isn't. And she is so happy to finally find someone else who's as weird as she is, who she thinks really understands her, and she thinks she's not alone, she's not this weird person, there's someone else like her. And then that's a lie. And I actually really, I hate him more for that than for the whole, like, attempted murder thing. I mean, that's bad, obviously, but just on a personal level, because I had a situation where there was a guy who liked me, and what he did, instead of just flat out telling me he liked me, was became one of my best friends by pretending that he liked all the same things I liked and stuff like that. And I was just so glad. Like, I was like, oh my God, you think that too? No one else seems to think that. I was glad to have this sort of validation that someone else had the same viewpoints that I did on some things. And it was all a big lie. And I felt more betrayed by that than by the fact that he liked me. Anyway, Hans was not creepy enough to me in this. I wanted him to be scarier than he was. He didn't seem super dark. He seemed more dark to me in the original Disney movie than he did in the stage show. And I just wasn't a fan of that, personally. I wanted him to be scarier. It was fun, though. I will say, like I said, we saw this show pretty much right before Broadway shut down, and it was fun a little bit later, a few weeks later, to see the very same Hans that we saw hosting the Disney on Broadway COVID concert. So that was enjoyable. Like I said, also Kiara Renee, they have a video of her singing Monster on YouTube. She was our Elsa. That was so exciting to me because I just really like Kiara Renee. I mean, obviously she originated the role of Esmeralda in the Hunchback musical, and that is just an amazing stage show, by the way. Hunchback of Notre Dame. They have this beautiful blend of the plot from the book and the music from the Disney movie and sign language usage and the internal versus the audible voice of the deaf protagonist. It's a wonderful show. I'm getting off track. Anyway, she originated the role of Esmeralda. She also she was Kendra, aka Hawk Girl, in DC's Legends of Tomorrow, and I loved her in that. So, but yeah, she was Elsa. She was gorgeous. She always is gorgeous. My mom it really struck her how statuesque she looked, apparently, especially next to Anna. Like, it is true. She had this very ethereal quality to her. This very sort of untouchable, cold, like she was a very good ice queen kind of person. Great casting, really. Oh, and also another little note about the actors is that the Annas, both of the Annas, the main Anna and also the little girl Anna, had amazing comedic timing. They were so funny. The little girl was hilarious. It was really great. Special effects. That's something that I also heard about going in, was people talked about how impressive the special effects were for like the Let It Go scene and stuff like that. And this really ties back to what I said about expectations when you go in, because actually not even expectations going in, expectations they give to us during the show. Because here's what happened. Okay, they had these ice effects early on in the show. I mean, little ones when young Elsa was going on and she accidentally hits Anna. It looked nice. It was good. When she's at the party and her ice powers flare up and everyone freaks out, that was so impressive to me, because they combined these practical effects of these sort of like spikes like shooting up on the stage out of the floor and out of the rafters and stuff like that, and the screens and the light effects and the sound effects, it all came together very well, and it was very good. I was so impressed by that. It looked amazing. And then she runs away, right? She runs, there's ice forming everywhere, everything she touches, she's freaking out. She runs away up to her snowy mountaintop, and the combination of the smoke machine that's blowing all this like fog and stuff on the stage, that's the way it's curling around her, the screens showing the icy background and the wind blowing and her collapsing to her knees. It was so impressive. I was so blown away by that, by the combination of everything they did, the way that the effects worked. I thought it looked astounding. And then they got to Let It Go, and it's like they have already built me up at this point to have high expectations for their special effects. And then Let It Go was just screens. And it wasn't like I wanted them to sort of blow me away. It's like, I'm like, this is Disney, not even to be like this, but you kind of hold Disney to a certain standard, honestly. Like, you should get the Imagineers on this, right? Like, combine the special effects with the screens, the virtual stuff, with some practical effects. I was expecting something crazy to happen on stage, something that I didn't know what to expect, but I expected something that I didn't expect, if that even makes any sense. It's like you want to be surprised. And it was I don't know. I was a little bit disappointed. Maybe that's just me because I mean it's such a big beloved number. Everyone has really high expectations for that number. Um, Everyone was overall. It seemed like everyone was blown away by that number, and obviously she sings amazingly. And the dress reveal was really fun. But I was like, if you give us something so high quality earlier in the show, and then you have a big moment, the big moment cannot be lesser than the earlier moments. But yeah, other than that, I mean, if we're talking about effects that they used in the show, something else that really stood out to me is puppetry. Like, okay, they had an Olaf puppet, and that was just very typical, right? It was very like in Lion King on Broadway, they have Timon and they have the just a guy standing behind him, like moving him around, and it was like that with Olaf. But Sven, Sven was amazing. It's a really well built puppet, the Sven puppet. There was definitely a person in there, but it was just extremely impressive mechanics or something. I don't know how they built it, but the engineering that went into designing that costume for the Sven actor was really something. Like my mom was always just looking at Sven every time he was on screen, like, how are they doing that? She wasn't even paying attention to the rest of the show, just looking at Sven. I know that I say that pretty much every single time I watch a show, I'm gonna have at least one moment somewhere in there that's just like, show people are insane. And for me in Frozen, that moment happened during the Fixer Upper number because in this show, they turned it into this really complex, like, dance number with all this stuff. And I was watching this, I was like, oh my god, show people. It's so athletic. That was my show people are insane moment in Frozen. It was Fixer Upper. I have one of them, at least one, every single time I watch a show. But yeah, Frozen on Broadway, it was a lot of fun actually. Even though I had low expectations going in, I really enjoyed it. It was really a lot of fun to see. I was very glad that I saw it. And I'm looking forward to seeing more shows eventually. Sometime when the world's opened up again. Until then, I guess this is the last theater review video I'll be making for a while. Gonna have to move on to some other stuff. Till next time, guys. Bye!